Made in Abyss has some of the saddest stories we have ever seen for its characters. It does not spare its characters whatsoever in terms of their fate. Characters like Urumui, characters like Bailiff, Nanachi, all of these characters have sad stories that happen to them. And one of the characters that this happened to the most, in my opinion, is Vueko. I think the best character story in season 2 and definitely the most despairing. But before we get into Vueko's story, if you do enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for similar content in the future. Let's get straight into it. The first time we meet Vueko is in episode 1 of season 2, and she is introduced in such a cruel way. I mean, straight off the bat of meeting Vueko, we already see her getting abused, right? She's being sexually assaulted by Jiromo, being used as his outlet for stress. Any problem that he has, he puts onto her and takes it out on her. He says to her various times, "I am not like you. You will not become me." Things like that. And this causes Vueko to develop an insecure personality. Throughout the rest of her story, she's shown as not being confident, having this disbelief in herself and thinking less of herself. This had some serious traumatic effect on Vueko. Vueko's dream is to get away from Jiromo, to go on an adventure, and she works towards this goal, to eventually joining the Ganja crew. And this is where she meets Wazukan, Bailiff, and everybody else a part of the crew. Now, this is the first point in her life where she actually feels any sort of joy, because when she was with Jiromo, she was essentially tormented. Her only source of joy at that point was a cat, and he threatened to kill the cat. Once the Ganja crew arrives on the Made in Abyss island, they meet this indigenous tribe, and this is where Urumui and Vueko meet. And this is very significant in the story because this relationship develops further and it becomes the integral part of what happened with the Hollow Village. Now fast forward a bit, the next time we see Vueko is when she's in a chamber with Urumui's children, and this is where Riko has gone to investigate, and she meets Vueko. And Vueko offers some insight about how the village is based on something that's horrific and something they can't be forgiven for, and it's similar to hell. And even at this point, she still talks down on herself. Riko asks her, "Are you a terrible person?" And she says she's a terrible person. She's not trying to manipulate Riko to get free here. She's just being honest, and she's locked in solitude for a significant period of time. See, the one thing that's really fascinating about Vueko is even with all of the terrible things that has happened to her, she hasn't used that as resentment. She has only continued with a positive outlook, helping Riko and the whole crew and telling them the history of what happened with the village. And in this history of the village, we see the troubling fate of Vueko. In the flashbacks of the Ganja crew, we see this relationship between Vueko and Urumui, and it's like a mother and a daughter. Vueko truly has a deep care, a love for Urumui. She sees Urumui as her own daughter. Urumui becomes Vueko's source of fulfillment, the thing that she's living for. She wants to see Urumui happy, but unfortunately for Vueko and Urumui, that's just not how things pan out in Made in Abyss. The whole crew gets sick by the contaminated 6-layer water, and one of the first people to actually get sick by this water was Urumui. And this is where the relationship really comes to fruition here, because we truly see how much Vueko actually cares for Urumui. Because when Vueko wakes up in the middle of the night, it looks like, to Urumui, who has a fever and looks terminally ill with this weird diarrhea, Vueko doesn't even hesitate to put her hand in this diarrhea and examine it. I mean, we have to think about this, right? This is human excrement. This is diarrhea. Vueko cares so much for Urumui to the point where she is willing to risk her own well-being to help identify what Urumui is sick with in order to help Urumui. And this manifests because as Urumui's condition is getting worse, Vueko is looking for any sort of solution to help cure Arumi's sickness, and the solution that they found was the wish-granting egg. It was actually Vueko's original suggestion to use this cradle of desire, this wish-granting egg on Arumi, and maybe it will be able to save her life. And I feel like these scenes truly show the desperation that Vueko has in order to help make Arumi better. So they give the wish-granting egg to Arumi. We see her develop these weird abnormalities, and Arumi progresses into this big blob, and Vueko can't help but feel absolute distress for Arumi's condition. Then Arumi starts producing these children, and they keep dying over and over again, and Vueko has to watch this person she now considers her daughter go through this cycle of just pure despair and depression of having the one thing that Arumi wanted, children, to keep dying over and over and over and over again, to have that taken away from her. And Vueko is really empathetic towards Arumi, trying to find any solution to cure Arumi's sadness. But unfortunately, this progresses even further with when Wazukan takes Arumi's children and starts feeding it to the crew. Because not only does Arumi have to birth these children over and over again and watch them die because they can't continue on living, but now her babies are taken from her and murdered by Wazukan and used as food for the crewmates. Even though they're saving their crew from death, the evil thing that has happened to Arumi completely breaks Vueko. And all Vueko can really do at this point is just watch from the sidelines. Because the reality is, as I said before, is that Jiromo instilled in her as a child that she is not even worthy of having an opinion. She will never stand up to anybody. That has been instilled into her. So even as Arumi's children is being used as sustenance for the crew members to keep them alive, she can't do anything even if she disagrees with it. I mean, she is so mentally, physically weak that she couldn't stand up to Wazukan if she wanted to. So she has essentially resigned herself to watching in the sidelines from a third-person spectator view as Arumi is used. Eventually, Arumi becomes this huge pink blob of some sort, and we find out that Wazukan gave her a second cradle of desire. And then Arumi breaks herself because of what Wazukan did and starts moving. And once she completely moves, we see Bailiff get ate by her and transformed into this non-human being, and then the rest of the crew basically accepts that fate as well, and the only one who doesn't accept that fate is Vueko. In fact, everything she's witnessed up to this point has accumulated. So now she makes her decision. She is going to end her own life. If there's one thing that she's been 100% sure of and is willing to go against anybody else to do, it is ending her own life. I mean, how sad is this? As I'm watching these scenes, I feel for Vueko, because watching what she's been through, her character, how she views herself, you just want to give this character a hug and tell him everything is going to be fine. But in Made in Abyss fashion, everything is not going to be fine. So she tries to kill herself, but Wazukan stops her because she's needed for his plan. And he ties her up and imprisons her in Arumi's mind. Even in the present, where Vueko has many years of experience in solitude in Arumi's mind and thinking about what happened, she still succumbs to Wazukan. He still uses her as if she is an object, and she doesn't protest. And we were shown various times where she's taken away and used by force by him. In fact, she even ends up dying because of this. Let's imagine in a separate reality that she protests. She goes against what Wazukan wants here. She would be with the Made in Abyss crew right now, venturing into the lower layers. But instead she's dead, and she died a truly devastating death. There's very few deaths in anime that really get to my core and make me feel a certain way about the series. Make me feel sad, make me feel angry. And Vueko's death is one of them, because she is just starting to experience what she wanted: fulfillment, people to appreciate her, people to care for her, to acknowledge her. That is what she wanted, and she was finding that in Rico Reg. She was finding the new crew. And as she was finding it, she unfortunately died this tragic death because Wazukan took her down to the lowest part of the 6 layers village, and she was trying to ascend back up to meet the people that she wanted to start this adventure with. I mean, in these scenes, she's talking about how happy she is that she gets to start a new adventure. She's talking about changing in these scenes. But as she's going up, the curse of the abyss is there, because we can't forget the village is being destroyed. There's holes all around the village, and the curse of abyss leaks in. So unfortunately for Vueko, she forgot about this curse of abyss due to her solitude in Arumi's mind, and this causes her to be hit by it. And we just see her completely breaking down. Her whole body, her eyes are coming out. I mean, her whole body's getting distorted. This character that only wanted any sort of happiness is just getting absolutely demolished in front of us. I mean, it truly makes you feel a certain way. I mean, I remember watching this scene, right? And I was mad at the author. I was mad at the author of Made in Abyss, because the way that this is done. In anime, I am perfectly okay. In fact, I like sad and devastating stories. But when a sad and devastating story doesn't have any sort of comeback, doesn't have any sort of them actually reaching the goal that they wanted to get, it just makes you feel for that character. And especially with such a nice character like Vueko, someone who did nothing wrong, right? Someone who truly cared for everybody around them, someone who was truly empathetic towards everybody, was willing to please everybody, a people pleaser, as you want to call it. I mean, to have that, her death happen to her like this, is something that truly is just despairing. But worry not, Vueko did not actually die on these steps. She remained cognizant for a little bit longer, as everybody in the crew tried to help her stay alive and sustain just her life in general, basically. Where she actually died was at the end, after the village got destroyed, when she was with Faputa Rico. And Faputa, after seeing Arumi's true memories, after seeing how everything actually played out in the village, I mean, on Vueko's deathbed, when she's dying, all Faputa, someone who hated everyone who had anything to do with the creation of the village, showed Vueko was just pure love, nothing else. Because throughout Arumi's suffering, the whole time Arumi was mutating into these weird abnormalities, she was being manipulated, used by Wazukan as this object for sustenance for the crew. The one person, the one singular person that stayed with Arumi and showed her any sort of significant care and love was Vueko. That is why Faputa, on Vueko's deathbed, showed Vueko nothing but love, because Vueko gave Arumi love throughout her suffering. The incarnation of Arumi, Faputa, her daughter, showed Vueko nothing but love. And love was all Vueko needed. That's all they needed. Because that's the one thing she lacked throughout her whole life. She wasn't shown love as a child. She was abused. She was raped. She was used. She was told she's a worthless piece of trash. And then even when she joined the crew, when she thought that she was being appreciated for being a sage, when everything starts to go south, all of a sudden they're starting to use this person that Vueko considers her daughter as this piece of this sustenance that brings her great despair and trauma, to the point where she wanted to kill herself, and she in fact tried to. But even the people who were manipulating her, Wazukan, didn't let her kill herself, because he still needed to use her. And even years after this happened in the present, Wazukan still uses Vueko as if she's an object, not letting her achieve any sort of happiness, not letting her achieve any sort of long-term loving relationships. I mean, this is truly, in my opinion, one of the saddest stories in anime of all time. What do you think? Do you think Vueko's story was as depressing and despairing as I do? Let me know in the comments below, and let me know what you think about the face cam, because I haven't seen a whole lot of anime YouTubers, creators actually show their face, and I was starting to, wonder why. But so I decided, you know what, I might as well just show my face because I think I'm pretty decent looking. Maybe I could get myself a Levi fangirl group. Leave applications below. We will be accepting them soon. But if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for similar content in the future. I will see you in the next video.